Well, it's time to finish this little guy. So let's start with rounding this scarf off and making it a little more proportional. So you can see how thick it is. See that thickness there between the belly and the scarf. I don't like it that thick, so I'm going to do some sweeping cuts. And that will make that look like that scarf's got a little wave in it, like it's kind of been blowing in the wind. And I'll take it around and round this upper scarf off. I want it to look like I've got two layers of that scarf draped over. And then I've got way too much bulk around the neck. So I'll take my knife and just kind of do a sweep cut toward the head, starting at about the center of the scarf, and bringing that around and down. And that will proportion that to the head. And I want to get rid of that sharp right angle or that shelf. So I'm tapering the top of that scarf down toward the transition of the head and the torso. And all I'm doing is pushing that blade with my thumb, doing a little push cut. Okay, I've got that top about where I want it. Now let's do the bottom. Now I strop my knife a little bit right before I turn the camera on. So hopefully your knife is good and sharp. Remember I said when you're getting ready to go into the detail work, you want a sharp knife. We've roughed this thing out. We've done all the forming and shaping. And now we're going to give it some character and personality. So I want this scarf to look like it's coming folded over. This centerpiece is folded over. This piece is tucked underneath, and this piece is tucked underneath, and this piece over here is coming from over here. So I'll do that by putting a stop cut right here, and then a chip cut right out there. And that gives the appearance that that scarf is tucked under. And I want to do the same thing over here, but I want to make sure I've got a little more separation from the bottom scarf and the top scarf. So I got me a stop cut there, come over here and pop that out, work that around to the top, and work it around to the bottom. Now on the bottom I want it angled down some. I want it to look like it's going underneath that top scarf. Yep, I like that. Yep, like that. Now, this side here, I can just taper that off a little. And yours will look a little different. You'll have to just eyeball it and get it to where you want it. And I want to bring this, so I'm going to take this stop cut down, swing it over here, and back down. And then I'm going to edge this out, and it's going to look like that bottom scarf is going underneath the top scarf. I'm not getting in a hurry because I don't want to scar that piece of material, the edge of that scarf. I'll just take my knife, slice that off, and round it down. Same thing with the edge of this scarf. Make it a little easier for you to see. I'll take some water in my brush Brush that down. You can see those folds a little bit better. And I like using a little bit of water in my brush when I'm doing the finish work. That helps me get rid of the fuzzies, shows me if I got any rough spots, kind of represents what the, if I'm sealing the wood, where the raw spots are going to look. So makes me see a real big nub right there. Makes that stand out very clearly. So I'll take that nub down and round that right under there. Got a flat spot there. Remember, flat spots draw your eye. And that water on there helped me see that through the grain. An eruption to the flow of the grain. I'm liking the way this little guy's looking. Now we got to deal with the top of this hat. See where I still have hat written on there. So what I want to do, I'm just going to lightly scrape the top of that hat with my knife, give it a little bit of wear look, and I'll know I'm done when that word and that cross is gone from up there. And you'll have to find the flow of the grain. This is the end cut again. If you have a gouge, a flat gouge, number 4 or number 3, you could go ahead and use your gouge here if you wanted. Or if you had a skew, you could use that. So all I've done is rough that up a little bit. Now I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to draw a seam around there. Just maybe an 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch from the edge of that hat. And I'm going to leave that pencil mark there. And that pencil lead, once I paint that hat a gray or a black, that pencil lead will look like a seam in that hat. If you had a small V tool, you could actually etch that in there. You can do that with your knife, but I don't recommend it at this stage unless you're a little more experienced carver. So you see how it looks like a seam in that hat. I'm liking the way that's looking. We're almost ready to paint this little guy. I want to clean this head up a little bit. Remember the water in the brush. So it's hard to see that head and what it needs done, but I put a little bit of water on there. Now, it's just a light amount. If you get it too wet, makes your wood a little mushy to carve. I can see all the little fuzzies on there, and I can go right around with my knife and trim those off. They'll stick out like a sore thumb during painting if I don't take care of them now. This is where the sharp knife comes in. If you're doing your cleanup work and everything looks like it's been picked at, your knife was either not sharp enough or you were too indecisive with your cuts. That knife should leave a good clean cut for you, and it shouldn't look picked at. Now I want to better transition right here at the hat, or the hat. So I'm going to do me a stop cut. All the way around this hat. And I'm taking my time, I'm not pushing very hard, maybe a 32nd of an inch at blades in that, right at that joint where the hat meets the head. So I've gone all the way around. Now I'm going to come up under, do a slice cut. Cleaning all those fuzzies out of there, making it look like that head actually goes in that hat. Pop that out. Yep, liking the way that's looking. This whole slice come out here. It clears that transition up, and it makes that look so much cleaner up around the brim of that hat. Trying to get this so you can see this piece that I'm cutting out of there, dadgone it. See there, just comes right out. So much cleaner transition. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way that head's looking. I want to get the lay of my scarf. I'm going to have this a striped scarf. So I'm just going to take a pencil and I'm going to draw lines evenly spaced, or sort of evenly spaced, sort of wavy looking, which will be the dividing lines for the colors of this scarf. I'm going to do the same thing here on this top part. I'm going to give a little tassel down here. Do the same thing here on this bottom part. And a little tassel down there. To give that tassel, I'm going to do a little stop cut. That creates the seam of that tassel, and that little piece just comes right out of there. Same thing over here. I'll do a stop cut. Not very deep at all. And that will pop that out of there. And then I'll take my knife and do 3 or 4 V cuts for a little piece of tassel. And that will make that look like threads. Yep. I like it. Now I can pick this thing to death. Just every time I look at it, I see another little fuzzy. There comes a time, based off of what you're doing and who you're doing it for, that you're just going to call it good enough. And for the purpose of this class, this one's going to be pretty close to good enough. Now one last thing before I get my paint. Every one of those pencil lines I drew on there, I'm going to do a stab cut in it. And I'm going to take my knife and do a pretty deep cut along that line. And that's going to keep my paint from bleeding from one section to another. And you have 2 choices when you paint it. You can paint the entire scarf white and then go in and do your red sections, or you can try to paint each section individually. That's totally up to you what you do. I tend to do each section individually, do the white or light color first, and then the darker color. I think that'd be enough on that one. And that'll probably be enough on that one. Yep. Okay, let me go get my paint, and then I'll show you how I paint this little guy. Okay, so here we go. I've got it cleaned up, ready to paint. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a mixture. This is boiled linseed oil and mineral spirits. 60% boiled linseed oil, 40% mineral spirits. And I'm going to give this a light coat with this mineral spirits and boiled linseed oil. This seals the wood. Now this part becomes a little controversial. There's 100 different opinions or 1,000 opinions. Everyone's got an opinion on if you ought to do this or what you ought to seal your carving with. You'll have to just find what works for you. This works for me. You'll also hear you should let it set for so many hours before painting. Sometimes I do, sometimes I'll let it set overnight, and sometimes I'll wipe it down and go ahead and paint. So today I'm just giving it a light coat. This is actually going to be the base of the Santa. I'm probably, depending on how this wood grain looks, I'm probably not even going to paint the Santa himself. I'll paint his scarf, I'll paint his nose, I'll paint his hat, etc. Now, I've already made, I'm going to let that wipe this down just a little. Now, when you wipe things down with BLO and mineral spirits, they can become combustible. So you want to let those dry and air out. Don't wad your rags up or your paper towels up and throw them in the trash, because you could have spontaneous combustions. So I'm going to let that set just while I'm doing this. I went out and cut a couple twigs. You remember in the promo video, I showed you this guy's arms. So all I've done is cut some twigs, and I've cut a little piece of wood and painted it orange. So here's the twigs that I painted. I'm going to go ahead and coat them as well, and that makes these a little pliable, little less likely to bend. And when I cut my twigs, I went ahead and tried to put some fingers on it. All I did was found me twigs that had little branches on it, and I cut them off and left those on there. And I've cut me out a little nose. So now that we've got them painted, I'm going to take my drill. I'm going to drill me a hole. Doesn't have to be real deep. I've got it marked where I want them. This is going to be where my arms are. I'm going to have one arm pointing down and the other arm pointing up. So it'll look something like that. When I'm done with them. So let's start painting. Now this is the other thing. Everyone has a preference on how they paint. I like my paint kind of watered down so I can see the wood grain through it and the knife divots. I like seeing that in the wood itself. And you can see this BLO has brought that wood grain out and all those little facets of the knife carving that wood. I like that, so I don't want that to be lost. So I'm going to take my black paint. This is just crafts paint. I get it at Michael's or Hobby Lobby or Walmart, whoever's got it on sale. And I'm going to put 1 drop in there. I don't need much. So for that 1 drop of paint, I'm going to put 10 drops of water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Doesn't have to be precise. That's just what I'm going to use. And then I'm going to take my brush, stir that up, and that gives me a watery, very watery mix. Now where you put your brush down in that, wipe those sides off so you don't have big lumps of paint from that original dot or drop of paint you put in there. You don't want that sticking to your brush. Now let's see how well this works for us. I'm going to paint along the grain and I'm going to give it 1 coat. Up under the underside, be careful not to get it on his face. If you do, it's not a big deal. You just take your knife after the fact and clean it up. But you don't want to have to do a lot of cleanup. So I try to be real careful. And then I want to get the edge of the brim of that hat. And I've got 1 little spot that I want to touch up. So I just put my brush in water. And all I'm doing is going through there where my brush may hit that head. And I'm trimming that off. Doesn't matter if you do it while the paint's still wet or after the paint dries. Well, a lot of times I'll do it after it dries. It flakes off a little easier. I want to do the eyeballs in the mouth, but I'm going to wait on those. Save that for last because I tend to touch them with my hands. So I'm going to start with the white. Shake it up a little bit. I usually keep 1 or 2 slots between my colors because oftentimes I put 2 drops in there because I'm going to need a little bit more. I'm doing a larger area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want my white a little thicker. And I'm going to use a little bit smaller of a brush. And this is where you got to decide where am I going to start my white, where am I going to start my red, my rotating pattern. Stir this white up. Make sure I don't have any glomps on my brush. And I think I'll just do my whole base coat white. Way I don't have to be quite as particular. And then when I put my red over it, I'll be a little more particular with that. And you can see, even though I did half the water with the white, it's still looking like a stain and just barely gives some accent to that wood. And that's something you'll have to play with, decide, oh, do I want more, do I want less? I tend to go ahead and give it the first coat and then look at it as it dries, and I tend to do the outer edges of my scarf before I do the middle of it. Makes me feel like I'm better controlling where I put that paint. And I just got a little bit on the body there. Not a big deal. I'll take my knife, clean that off. It's going to make that tassel look nice. I can see where we put those lines at, that separation showing up. Just be real particular. Don't rush the paint. A bad paint job can make a good carving look pretty ugly. The same is true of a good paint job. It can make an ugly carving look pretty good. So the moral of that story is learn to paint. A lot of people teach painting classes. And I'm actually going to take one this coming spring, assuming Patty Moore is going to be at the Kerrville next year. She was injured this year and she wasn't able to be there. So next year I'm hoping to take her class. I'm going to go down to Kerrville, Texas and spend a week carving and learning. Okay, so I've got the hat and I've got the white. I want that to set up a little bit. You've heard the old saying, watch your paint dry. That's what we're going to do. So while that paint's drying, I'm going to take a little dot of black. Actually put that up here on the edge. I could just dab my brush in there, no more than I'm going to use. And now I'm going to paint the eyes. And I use a pointed brush and I just do dots. I'm doing is like tap, 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 tap at the end of that brush, just barely touching it. And I'm putting those eyes where I want them. And don't get in any hurry. And then try to make sure your eyes are proportionally the same. And now I'm going to do the mouth. In a larger carving, I would carve those eyes and that mouth in there, but this is a pretty small carving. You could still do it. I want a very thin line for that mouth. And I want my Jack Frost to be happy. The edge of the mouth should run over to the bottom of the eyes, not in line, not all the way up to the bottom. There's my mouth. And then I'm going to take my nose. And I will glue this in later, but for the sake of this class, I'm just going to insert it. Look how cute that is. And then I'm going to take my arms. And again, I would glue these in, but just to show you and speed things up here. Look how cute that is. And that white should be dry enough now, so I'm going to take these arms out so I don't break them, since I didn't glue them in. I'm going to go ahead and do my red. I'm going to put it right here because I've used that for red before. And I want this red a little bit thicker. So I'll put 5 drops in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, make sure my brush is cleaned out. Stir that red up. Now you remember we took our knife and we cut those lines separating these color joints. That was one of the last things I did. So let's just see if that keeps my paint from bleeding. And while you're doing this, be careful not to let your finger touch those eyes or that mouth that you just painted, because then as you're turning this, you'd end up with little black fingerprints. Does that sound like I'm talking from experience? Well, I am. I think we're going to say that that's pretty good. Take my knife, clean this up right here. Clean this up right here. Clean that up right there. All these places I'm cleaning up while I still have my paint mixed. I'll go back and touch up. And that's old Jack Frost. His arms back in there. His hand waving. This one down by his side. Or you could have him out to the side, however you want it. And you've carved your first snowman and painted it. We'll let that set. I'll have to glue those arms in and that nose. Then we'll let that set. And then tomorrow I may put some spray lacquer on it and call it good. Thanks for following along. Pick-a-Boo Pup will be the next one that I do.